Do you find yourself translating from your native language into English? If so, what's the most difficult part about speaking English for you? To get better at a language, I think at some point we have to be thinking in that language, and English is no different. So today, let's talk about some of the ways that you can stop translating and really start thinking in English. Are you ready to get away from translating from your native language into English? If so, then let's get into it. Open your mind to be able to think in English faster, and to do this, first, clear your head of everything that you know in your native language. You already have a base of words and phrases in your own language, so what I want you to do is clear your mind so that you start fresh, just as if you're starting over as a young child who knows nothing about English. When we are children, we usually don't go into situations with an idea of how things should be. We just go along with what happens in that moment. So instead of translating, think about what is happening to you in that situation, in that moment. Forget about what you already know and start learning about the world around you in English. So think about trying to learn English in English by doing as much as possible in English. Don't hear something and then immediately go to your dictionary or try to translate it first. Learn it in the context of that situation. If you are at a restaurant and the waiter is going around the table one by one, you're probably right to think that he's taking everyone's order, and so you should be prepared to give your order in English. This is an easy way to use common sense when you're learning before first going to a dictionary. One of the very first Japanese words that I learned was dekai, because everywhere I went, I can hear people whispering as they walk by, dekai, dekai. And so after a while, I just figured they must be saying something big or talking about something that had to do with my height. This leads to us talking about listening to a program in English. This can be a podcast, Netflix, YouTube, or any program that's in English. Try to listen to that program in English and really make it a point to try to understand what's happening in that program without any translation or any other help. Just like your native language, English has patterns that you will start to notice and be able to pick up the more that you hear English. See if you can pick up on some of these patterns. And even if you don't know everything that's happening in the program, you can still pick up on some of these patterns and maybe start to begin to figure out what's happening in that program. This doesn't require a dictionary or for you to translate anything at all. This is just a simple way that you can start thinking in English while learning English. So try it the next time you are listening to an English program. Are there any patterns that you really start to notice? Is there anything else that you're starting to pick up on? And if you know the title of the program, you might be able to pick some things out of the conversation just out of the context of that title. You'll be surprised by the little things that you can do just by listening. Your brain can pick up a lot more than you know. So don't use a dictionary to look up something new every time you hear a new word. Going back to what we talked about before about finding a Netflix show, a podcast, or a YouTube English program, try to make sure that you find something that's interesting for you. Also, try to find something that has as much conversational, everyday English as possible so you can find examples of how real people speak in English. Then, without using a translator or an English dictionary, let your brain do the work for you. Can you find out the patterns? What are some things that you notice coming up often? Pay attention to situations and how people are speaking and behaving in those situations. Use your imagination to try to figure out what is being said in those situations based on the context of those situations. If you use the dictionary or translate too much, sometimes it's much more difficult for you to naturally learn because your brain is waiting for that extra help. And I've just found in general, the things that I have to work a lot harder to remember end up sticking with me the longest. So try less so that you can learn more. Using subtitles is okay at first, but also try to get in the habit of listening to the English as you hear it so that you can get away from those subtitles as soon as possible. When I first came to Japan, I would always have the TV on in the background regardless of what I was doing. And a lot of shows in Japan do have subtitles. The more that I would see similar shows, I started noticing words or phrases that would come up in certain situations. After a while, I didn't have to use the subtitles as much because I could start to understand those situations, and even if I didn't know everything that was happening, just based on the context of that situation, I was pretty much able to pick up what was going on. You can do the same thing in English. The more that you listen, you will start to become more comfortable with English and its patterns. And the more comfortable that you become, you will notice that you don't have to use those subtitles as much either. Maybe you won't understand everything exactly as it's being said, but you will be surprised how much that you can pick up just based on the context of those situations. You will also start to notice patterns and be able to pick up on phrases that get used over and often. So start with the subtitles if you have to, but see how soon you'll be able to get away from using those subtitles. After living in the US for a while, my wife would start to tell me that even though she didn't necessarily know word for word what was happening, just based on the context, most of the shows that we watched on TV, she would understand what was going on after some point. You definitely understand more than you think. Small things that we do will add up over time. I think a lot of people, including myself, want to be just right at the top and be the best at something right away. Instead of taking those little steps to get there, we just want to jump straight to the end and already just be the best, especially when we are adults. When I first got to Japan, I used to be so discouraged because it became so difficult to do simple things that I would never have to think about when I was back home. And sometimes this will make us not want to try because we think, I need to be perfect before I can try this at all. This is the quickest way to not get any better at English at all. So how about trying to learn one new thing every day? Learn a new phrase and then try it out as soon as possible. Did you hear a new way of saying something? If you learn something a little bit at a time, once you look back, you'll be surprised at how much you know. English takes time. Instead of being the best right from the beginning, focus on improving little by little daily until you hit your goal. And just think, no one knows everything, not even native speakers. There's things that I learn each day, even to this day. Don't try to learn everything at once, but do try to learn a little something each day. And a little is better than nothing. I hope these ideas will help you start thinking differently about how you can go about thinking in English. If these ideas have given you any help at all, please share this with someone else that you think it will help. If you're interested in learning more English, please click here for the video popping up on the screen. Thank you guys so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you.